Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on the TLBTV network and brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida, on Florida's beautiful Space Coast. And today I'm really excited to have a special guest with me, Russ Ward, and Russ is coming to us from Tonawanda, New York. I hope I'm getting that right, a suburb of Buffalo. And Russ is a veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, an author, an ordained minister, and what am I leaving out, Russ? Perhaps you can start telling us a little bit about yourself and where you're born and raised, and where you went to school, and how you ended up being in the United States Army.
Sure, Bill. Well, then, I was born in 1947 at a much simpler time in America. Everything was a lot more conservative back then, and everybody stuck to the given rule of how you should be acting and everything. But at any rate, so then growing up in Buffalo's West Side, very adventurous time for me, naturally for all children growing up and everything. But I went to public school number 3, and Grover Cleveland High School. Graduated in 1965. And anyway, after 1965, I worked for about a year for an uncle of mine at a small grocery store, and eventually got drafted into the United States Army during the Vietnam conflict there. Yeah. So then, not thinking that I knew everything at that point, really had a tough time adapting to the military life and everything, but more or less went on with it. And then naturally the company I was with was going to be assigned to Vietnam. So then we trained for about a year, and eventually we left out of San Francisco on a troop carrier. As a whole unit, we went over to Vietnam. It took like about 22 days. But anyway, on the way, gambled, cleaned our weapons, and hung around and waiting to go get the enemy.
Hey, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, adjusting to military life can be a little difficult. I know I went through it, and actually, I went on a troop ship in the Marine Corps. You know, they put us on LSDs, landing ship docks, and I sailed from Pearl Harbor to Vietnam, and it took us 21 days because the slowest ship in the convoy could only do 8 knots.
Right.
So anyway, I can understand that. So you got the Vietnam War about 67 because you were there for the TET Offensive, and maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about that, because unless you're our age, most people have no idea what Vietnam was all about or what went on, and the TET Offensive was certainly a major battle in that conflict.
Yeah, so anyways, we went over, like I say, as a whole unit, and so then that was the 2nd Cav that we went over. I was in the 1st of the 50th Mechanized Infantry unit, and that meant that we could ride on what they call armed personnel carriers, APCs. So then I was a 60 machine gunner on that vehicle. So getting to Vietnam, like I said, I was with that unit, and I had actually maybe 5 different firefights where we found the enemy and, make our attack with the APCs. And naturally, in between the APCs, there would be infantry soldiers from a different, company that they would fill in between the APCs. So then naturally, they encountered a lot of like the hand-to-hand combat type of situation where the NVA were entrenched in whatever hooches or foxholes, whatever have you. Well, then naturally, some of those guys would get killed. So that'd be our job of dragging our guys, back to the APC so we could take them back to camp. So then it was a, pretty horrifying type of experience and everything. But and anyway, so then it was close to maybe 4.5 or 5 months. Like I say, we went over as a unit, and well then for Vietnam, we were only given to stay 1 year there. So then, but the thing is, the unit was going to stay there after that 1 year. So they have it.
Yeah, because the replacements were coming and going all the time. And that, as I recall, our tour of duty typically was 13 months, and that included, I guess, the travel time over and back. And you also mentioned the NVA, which is the North Vietnamese Army, which was the ones who initiated the TET offensive. And TET is, well, I'll let you explain what TET is all about.
Well, about going up to that, like I say, as the unit is staying there, so then they had to have what they call infusion. So then that'd be where they rotate some of the soldiers out and bring new ones in with different departure times. So then I ended up in the infantry unit myself. So that was the 1st to the 7th Cav and Charlie Company. But then as far as what that company was noted for was, it goes all the way back to the Custard's Battle at Little Bighorn. Mm-hmm. And so then, they were really gung-ho type of guys, that it's time to charge, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, I was pretty well scared up, having that experience of dragging all these dead infantry guys. And but anyway, so then I did everything I could to try and get out of the field, to tell you the truth. But nevertheless, First Sergeant come and got me and made me point man for like 3 days. And wherever I was at that given point. But next thing we knew, the TET Offensive began at the end of January. Mm-hmm. So then we had to go by Chinook up to the city of Hue, and that was spelled H-U-E. Mm-hmm. So then the North Vietnamese were, entrenched really, really well into that city and everything. And actually, the Marine divisions were there first. And then naturally, the way that the Marines were always trained to charge the enemy, so they were getting actually slaughtered crossing the field and everything. So then they eventually called the Army. And then, because I didn't have a good rapport with my first sergeant, when we all lined up, actually at 3 o'clock, we had to, when we got to that location, it was like the beginning of the monsoon rains and everything. So all this kind of rain pouring down. So next thing you know, we're making our way through the jungles and putting the rifles over our heads, forging the river going into the city of Hue. So then we're waiting at a certain old French mission, and the word came back, word up front. And, actually, I didn't really understand all that. I thought it was the guy on the other side of me, but no, it was me. So up front and, ordered me to make the charge on the given word. So when I took off running, well, then, everybody was going to be following me in the back. In the meantime, our side, we're calling in artillery barrages, and, we're talking about explosions maybe 100 feet high, hitting the surrounding area for the North Vietnamese, right? So then as I'm running, I think the second guy in line knew that I was running to my imminent death. So he veered off the other way. Now I'm running down the field myself. But nevertheless, anyways, I eventually tripped and fell into a bomb crater. Mm-hmm. And, smashed up my nose and everything. And then eventually regrouped myself, ran and got back in the line with my guys. So then, we got into the city of Hue that day, and, we're making our way, but they had, all kinds of positions set up, to hold us off and everything as we're trying to make our way through the city. But at any rate, coming to the next day, and at the time, the given word was that if you led the way into a battle, the next day you would fall to the rear. But, by then, my squad, which would be like 11 guys, as I recall, or 12, that we were only down to 3 guys left. So we were attached to another squad. So they called that squad. And when they see there was me still around, they called me up front again. And here again, I was making a move on a machine gun position. But, I guess I was looking the wrong way. The enemy opened up on me. I caught just 1 round. I always refer to it as my $1 million wound, because that was enough to get me out of the field there. And so, then I went to 3 different hospitals in Vietnam. They were all under mortar attack every night and everything. The Cam Ranh Bay, the last place where I stopped, it was so crowded there, I guess because of the Tet Offensive and other battles going on in Vietnam, mm-hmm. that there was no room for me. So then they had to actually send me to Japan. So then when I got to Japan, wherever I had the operation, I'm really not quite sure. I guess it was at Cam Ranh Bay. But they did, not too good of a job on my leg where they ripped open the whole fascia that covers the muscle. So then the muscle would always hang out of my leg there, you know. So then, well, the doctor in Japan decided I should go home for that. So then, I was sent back home. So I was just there for 6 months, 15 days.
Yeah. So when you went home, a lot of us, and I wasn't one of them, but a lot of the vets that came back, they went through like San Francisco or Seattle or someplace like that, really received a horrible welcome. I mean, they were shouted at, spit on, and everything else. When you went back as
medevac.
So, what did you receive that treatment yourself, or?
All the time when I was in the service, because it was just a bad time for America. It was a very unpopular war and everything. So then every time that, where I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, I would be able to, you could take a bus or a plane, and for me, I chose to take a small plane that I would take a plane from Killeen, Texas, over to Dallas. When I would get to Dallas, I would immediately change out of my military uniform into my civvies, because I didn't want to get hassled. At that point, that was my feelings and everything. So then that's what I did. So I got away with a whole lot that I didn't really, push the fact that I was here to fight the Great War of Vietnam or anything like that. Like I say, I was drafted in the military. I was just serving my country, for the obligation that I thought that I should serve. But
you also received, a wound and a Purple Heart. So, I mean, you certainly did your part.
Right.
What happened then? Were you stationed someplace else in the States, or?
Yeah. We come back medevac into St. Andrews Air Force Base, and then we were bussed up to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. So then I served my convalescent time there. And at that time, if you had less than 90 days, you would be able to get an early out of the military. But, one way or another, I think at about 93 days, they reassigned me to Fort Hood, Texas. So I had to serve the other 3 months down there. So, doing that. But I was just barracks orderly and stuff like that, because I could not wear combat boots because my leg was, rather disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I served that out. And then next thing you know, my 2 years is up, and I was out of the service. And actually, when I got home, and I have to tell you, for my family that I was involved with at the time, and I was rather one of those foolish kinds of guys that I actually got married before I went to Vietnam. Well, then, as things go like that, that marriage didn't last. It only lasted, I think, 7 years. So we had very trying times and everything like that. I have to tell you, I was on a lot of different pain pills that led to taking me a whole lot of other types of drugs. And, as much as I always think that it was that wife's fault that we got divorced, it was probably maybe a lot of mine too, as I realized over the years. So then, I had a bad time for 10 years. Doing all these kinds of drugs and everything. I was leading, I thought, some kind of a successful life in the meantime, but everything come crumbling down when I got divorced, obviously. I didn't work for 3 years. I finally got hired at the Postal Service. Then naturally, when I got hired at the Postal Service, there was no drug testing back then, but certainly you couldn't be high on drugs or anything like that, to try and do your job. I just worked in the processing plant for the Postal Service in Buffalo, New York, canceling mail and, moving mail around, stuff like that. I was not a carrier or anything like that.
Right.
So then, I lasted, my whole career there at the Postal Service. But I wanted to go back and say that in regards to all those drugs and everything, at a certain point I had picked up running. So then, and I'd want to put this forward to any veterans today that are having problems, soldiers coming back in the military, anything like that. To do actually, running 3 or 5 miles or whatever have you, you can sustain a high, how they say, the runner's high off of that. You get endorphins moving and everything. And, you can sustain yourself in a high state at that point, but naturally it wears off real quick. And it's nothing that really affected your body that much or anything like that. So if you could take up some kind of good activity, and then naturally another big assistance to me was my family. I had great mother and father support. And other than that, my parents were very religious. And so then us kids would have to go to church all during the time that we grew up and everything. So that formed a good basic foundation for me to want to, reach out some way or another to be able to, go to church and be in contact with my God, as I see what my God is. And so then a lot of those kind of things, you really need to have support. No man's an island. You need help to fight your battle, whatever that may be. Soldiers see a whole lot of bad things and everything, and it's a terrible pressure on the soldier himself, because you figure all the civilians that never got a chance to go in the military, they don't even know anything like that. But one thing in the military, they teach you how to be strict with yourself, that you can really do a lot more than somebody that never had any kind of push for reaching a good goal or anything like that. So like I say, the soldiers today have a tough time.
Yeah. Being in the military, I think you get used to accomplishing things from the time you get up in the morning. So you're used to doing things, and it makes you feel good. And another thing I wanted to mention is talk about running. I always tried to run, 5 or 6 times a week, and I usually do 3 or 4 miles. And I was thinking all the time, and that's how I got the inspiration for the book I wrote. And now, so you got up to a point where I think in 2005 you studied to become an ordained minister.
Right. So then, I did that, but I really didn't have a big plan for that or anything. So just being of a religious mind and everything, I seen that opportunity that I could do that. And well, at any rate, and writing the different books in regards to like the books that I have right now, there's some different mentionings about God in there, but I've had past books that I've tried to promote the belief in God and everything, that anybody would be reading the books and stuff like that. Just want to, be able to put forth a good word for everything that's great in our lives, and God certainly is great. That we have that inspiration and faith and hope that things will work out. And like I say today, there's a lot of that religious foundation that's missing in our society, and I think that creates a whole lot of havoc and problems that we're having today. So then,
I agree.
Yeah. So, but anyway, whoever that thinks that they're all alone or something like that, they shouldn't feel that way. They need to reach out to whatever support they can get, their family, religious faith, and faith in yourself. Things are not going to be, they're not final. Things work through themselves. Things always get better. Just have to give it time. So, yeah.
So anyway, so you wrote 5 books altogether, and the one book we want to talk about, but what was the first one I think you wrote was what, on your Purple Heart?
And Russell's Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Right. And it basically gave the story of growing up, on the west side of Buffalo, and then all the way in regards to like getting drafted, and then talked about my military experience in Vietnam. One of the things was in Vietnam, because that was actually Vietnam was the first war that was broadcast on the evening news. So then they showed a lot of things that civilians didn't know went on in war, stuff like that. So we were pinned with all these horrible things that went on. It happened in all wars. That's just, the war is a grisly thing, Yeah. But anyway, it made the war very unpopular, naturally, as we know all that. So I know for close to 40 years, I really didn't say too much about Vietnam. You have to kind of be quiet, because who wants to hear about politics and religion?
Yeah.
Those types of, conversations, they go on forever, and they can actually end up in a battle.
Yeah.
So that,
and many vets from the Vietnam era are they feel the same way, and a lot of them ended up with PTSD, and now we're just starting to recognize that and trying to get a lot of them help. And I guess because of the wars in the Mideast, Iraq and Afghanistan and everything, that's all kind of helped out even the guys from back in our era, the Vietnam era. So that was good. Okay, so you wrote a book about your experiences in the Army. What's the next book you wrote?
Yeah, so then I think it would have been Selfie Greats. self-degrades in regards to, you know, a lot of people are actually in the abusive state of substances and lifestyles. So then naturally my books, you know, I'm not a professional or anything like that. So then I would say that if anybody's addicted to whatever, you know, substance or lifestyle, then they really need professional help. But on the abuse level, that if you think that maybe you're abusing substance or, you know, like alcohol, drugs, if you're gambling, whatever have you, even cigarette smoking is in that Trump Mania 2 book. But at any rate, you know, I have many different, you know, I try and come up with a different concept of how you would help somebody out in regards to those problems. So then I'd always want to use maybe a light humor. So then, you know, my books tried to, you know, go that way with using a light humor, try and ridicule different substances and, you know, maybe what a fool that we make of ourselves by overdoing different things like that, you know, to more or less, you know, have people confront themselves. Maybe they're just, you know, doing a little bit too much of whatever they're doing. And then there's a lot of different advices on maybe what you could do, you know, and it's, you know, it's all from my standpoint of view and everything. It's nothing professional. So then a lot of it is, like I say, hopefully humorous. And I always thought we learn the best when we're having a good time. We're having a good time. Tell me something. I remember if you're forcing on me, I forget about it, you know, so. Tried to go that way with it, and but anyway, make my effort. And
so that was really, I guess, your inspiration for writing your book, Trump Mania, which became Trump Mania 1. And I'm going to scoot over a little bit so people can see. This is the cover of Trump Mania 1, and in your book, I like your style, the way you wrote, because it's kind of a light style, so it's real easy to read. It's not like some of these books we read that are like real heavy textbook types, you know, and I think, oh, you know, I don't know if I even want to get into that. So, and you have injected some humor into it and so forth. But your book, Trump Mania, is about giving suggestions, I'm sorry, to Trump and ideas to Trump on how he can make America greater in the future. And you're also talking about how we help ourselves and become more independent and more self-reliant and responsible for ourselves. So, and I know you have, in the beginning of the book, you have like 5 things that we're supposed to or 5 helps or aids that we can use. So perhaps you can tell us about those.
Yeah, Bill, you know, I think it's just a terrible thing that all Americans cannot have a great level of standard of life. And the thing is, you know, I really feel as though that there's too much emphasis put on programs for the poor that gives them various different benefits and everything for free. Because they're not able to, you know, hold a job or save them money. I don't know, whatever. They're not able to get poor. They don't have good education, whatever. They can't secure a good job. So at any rate, and I think that there's too much of a, you know, a situation in the country, you know, say like I'm going to mention maybe like Goodwill, say Salvation Army. Those are like big time used product type of places. You know, so then people are buying used clothes. They're obviously convinced that they're poor people and they need to buy these second-handed clothes and everything. So then, I say then there's also like garage sales. There's all kinds of independent sales going on in the country, and you know, people just live off of all this used stuff and everything. And you know, I think there's too much of availability for all that, you know, second-handed stuff and everything. I thought, you know, for one plan that I have, you know, that hopefully President Trump would see this plan, that I call it my Consumers Household Product Trade-In Program.
Yeah, CHIP.
So then, you know, according to the way that I see it, you know, there's, you know, if you ever go in you know, you go in a store and you could see like, say, a suit, and you see it for $300, right? And then you go back in a few months and, you know, maybe it's $150. Another few months after that, it's $75. There's a lot of markup and all this kind of stuff. And I thought that the, you know, the manufacturer, starting from the manufacturer, they could maybe lower their profit margin. The retailer, definitely, they can offer, say, like 25% off They got all kinds of sales anyways. It's just another way of shuffling the sales promotion programs around. Offer 25% off, but you have to bring in let's use the idea of a suit. Okay, so then I want to buy a new suit. I'm going to bring in my old suit. They're going to give me like a credit coupon or whatever you want to call it for 25%, but I have to buy a new suit to use that. So then, and that old suit, what are you going to do with that suit? Well, we're going to take it someplace, recondition it if it needs reconditioning, clean it up and everything. Eventually, well then, we give a lot of foreign aid to all these, oh my gosh. My phone's got to ring in the background.
Yeah, that's okay. It happens.
I threw it off to the side. I shut off my cell phone, but I never realized that one.
Yeah, the landline always is the one that always gets me too.
Lose track of where I was at. Let's see.
Well,
now.
anyway, you were talking about we end up with a lot of used goods, and really we end up wasting a lot of stuff. So much stuff goes in the trash, and I believe that what you were thinking of is maybe we can help some third world countries or people in other societies with some of the goods that we throw away that are really very good and serviceable.
Right. And, instead of us giving big amounts of money to these foreign countries that their governments basically keep for themselves, the people are so poor anyways, no matter how much we give them. How about if we send our products over there and then, that there would be these, entrepreneur types of people that would set up a small shop and sell those clothes to their people. And I thought that would be also a nice way to westernize the people also and get them out of their, ancient ways of life and stuff like that. Modernize the people that just the way we've been modernized over the world over the period of time. So, yes. So, that would be a great way to, try and lift the poorer class up into the middle class of people. So that's the one program there, So then, like I say, I guess through my running and everything, I've gotten to be like, an out of the box type of thinker, thinking, what would be really fantastic or something like that, But then I even got to the point of one of my other programs that, we understand at a certain point in our country, we had no national debt. And then there was 3, 8 trillion, 15 trillion. Now we're at $21 trillion that we owe, and nobody's even got any kind of an idea how we're going to pay it all back or anything like that. So I thought, well, how about if we look, down the road a ways here? Eventually, that national debt's going to be 30 trillion, 40 trillion. There's no end to it. It's not really that much of a problem as far as the way I'm thinking. I did some research on the internet, and I see that our country has actually $225 trillion worth of real estate value in our country. So if you think about when you're taking out a loan and you need equity or something like that, we have enough equity to bankroll us for a long time. So then I thought, well, then how about if, I'll come up with this plan, that would be quite unique in regards to, having Trump in Congress, obviously, he doesn't do everything himself, obviously. So then how about writing a $50 trillion check, a loan check for ourselves, pay off the 21 trillion, you got $29 trillion to work with. $29 trillion, that's a whole lot of money. You could actually double all the working salaries of all the working people, working wage hours pay. You could raise all that in the country. Those people are now able to buy double the amount of stuff they're buying now, or they could buy higher quality things. You think about all the little economy cars on the road that when the people have accidents, they get mangled and killed. I think the quality of the vehicles, number one, could be raised. Then naturally, there's so many products on the market today that's why there's so much stress in our country that you're not able to, go out and buy all this kind of stuff. But, for the lower class of people or, even middle class, as far as that goes. Yeah. So then, the idea would be that, number one, that and consignment with the trade-in program, that the manufacturers would receive a lot more orders, the people able to buy a lot more products, right? So then naturally, you would after a while you'd have to I have to back it up. The thing is, we talk about our unemployment rate being 4.3% or something like that. Maybe I think I even seen 3.9 recently. But the thing is, though, there's still like, well, it might be like 15 million people that are beyond unemployment and looking for a job, that they've given up or whatever. They found another way to do things. However, they've done it. They've absorbed themselves into their families for their survival, and they're not being productive or anything like that. But then, those people, like I say, there's the more that manufacturing would open up jobs, there's more people that would come out there, that are not really employed right now, to take those jobs, and then the country would become a lot more productive. Also, government would receive so much more taxes, where everybody's buying off so many more products, sales taxes and income tax, people working, that would make the country flourish beyond anything that was ever known of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually only about 63% of the American population is employed. That's the employment rate. So when we hear all these unemployment rates and all that, that's really only one type of statistic, and then actually that's a U3, and if you look at the U6, it's twice that, so the government plays a lot of tricks with us with those numbers, don't
right. I'll say, right. And like I say, I think a lot of the problems with crime today and whatever have you, there's just a lot of economic pressures on people, and then a whole lot of all kinds of pressures today. It's really, really a complex society we live in today. You need to really hold yourself down and,
Yeah, one thing that I believe, Russ, is that if people have jobs and, what you're talking about is more jobs and that it would be higher quality jobs, that then people are going to start feeling good about themselves. They're going to be working, and so there's going to be less tendencies towards crime and addictions and all the rest of those types of things that kind of plague our society today.
Right. As we know, evil grows in an idle mind. Right? You're not doing enough, and you're not busy. And you start thinking of ways to make money or whatever have you. At least doing evil deeds and stuff like that gets you in trouble. So then.
Tell us about how some of the things are that we can help make ourselves better in the future. Like you have programs. One of them that I got a kick out was Slimmers, for example.
Right. Obesity is running wild in the country. Mm-hmm. We live in such a sedentary, lifestyle that it's a very difficult. And even the poor class of people, they have a sustenance of. Money and stuff like that. They can go out and buy, whatever, potato chips and all the desserts and everything, and they're not very active or anything like that. That creates a problem with it. You become obese after a while. It's I understand that's great that they're buying all this stuff and everything, helps the economy, but in the same token, they're going to get sick, and if they're in the lower class, they're going to be using their government-sponsored health cares and everything. Eventually, we end up going to be paying for a lot of that anyways. So then. Like say in the last part of the many parts of the book, I try and go back and forth with different ideas, and then I come forward with, well, if you think about it, if the government's going to, do so much for you, to provide so much for you, well, then what are you going to do for yourself? And that's what it's all about. That people that that are abusing food and stuff like that, well then, they need to cut back, and a lot of those different things that I have for my Slimmers. Gives all kinds of advice and, ridicules the food factor, and that, what a fool you make of yourself by being, that kind of person that, I think a lot of times I've known people that are heavy, and they're the ball of the party, because they're eating and having a good old time and spreading the joy to the other people. And I say, so then it just gets them more of a problem all the time. They're the ones that really have to suffer for it. I think it hurts their ability to become personally successful in life. They understand they're obese or whatever have you, and that's just the way that their life is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And it certainly is a health risk as well.
Right.
And then, is there anything else about Trump mania you'd like to talk about? And I want to tell all our viewers, I never have a guest on as an author unless I've read his book, but I've read Trump Mania, but I haven't read Trump Mania 2 because I just haven't had time, because Russ and I just got to know each other over the last few weeks. So by the time I got the book and everything, I haven't had a chance. So do you want to talk about that as well?
Well, the Trump Mania 2 is basically a continuance of different ideas, such as, I've known like a lot of young people. We were all young ourselves at a certain point, and you really you have your most energy when you're young, and you have all this gusto of enthusiasm and everything. But maybe you really don't have the money or anything like that. So now, as a young person, you're eventually going to get this job, and you're going to be put forth. You might be, over the period of your lifetime, your career. Just a regular type of job with today's wages they are and everything, you might make $1 million. That's a great contribution to our economy, to our country and everything. Every person, that when they're young. Well, then why not help these young people out? Matter of fact, there's even all kinds of programs right now. In New York State, we have Governor Cuomo. He wants to give free college education to all these kids that can't afford it. That's a great thing. Well, then my plan is pretty much on the same basis. But what I'm saying is, every kid that turns to be 21 years old, give him $50,000 to help with his college, or perhaps if he's not, there's a lot of people who go to college. You don't even need the college today in regards to you're not going to get that upper position job. A lot of people are just taking college. Basically, I really believe the education system just spread out education in regards to, being able to be capable of going through your life and everything. You have to understand different things. I think kids have to stay in school longer today. They've spread out the whole education process. But at any rate, like I say, because I've known different people at a regular job like the Postal Service, they've had degrees, business degrees and different things like that. And they were not able to get themselves hired to higher end types of jobs. So then, with that thought in mind, maybe a kid is not going to go to college. Well, there's 50 grand, go buy yourself a house, get yourself set up. Or maybe a business idea you have or something like that, just to help to get out. There could be a very lenient payback schedule given to each and every one of those young people. Like I say, if you think about investments in regards to earning more money and everything, the best thing you can invest in is your youth. They're going to do the most for you. They'll find a way to maybe make this money. So the one thing, they won't be a burden to you and cost you money. So then, let's say, that's one of the plans that I have in the Trump Mania 2. And then, another one that I love too is, and I'm always so mad that when we hear about Powerball Lotto and Mega Millions Lotto, one person wins $500 million. $500 million. Now, one way or another, they end up probably taking the cash value, and then they have to pay their taxes. They're lucky if they end up with, and it's a lot of money, believe me, end up maybe $175 million. That's fantastic. But that's basically one family has that. I think that, matter of fact, European countries, they have multiple winning lottery systems. Like over in Greece, they have that. I thought that some way or another, if our, countries' administrators would get to hear, maybe about an idea that we should have this in America, multi-winners lotto. That at a certain point, say like as the jackpots grow, well then they have a cap on them, and at that capping point, then another winner has to be chosen. So then, at any given time, if a lotto grows to like $500 million, well, upon the first person that's going to win that, well then he's only going to win a certain amount of money. Then they'll keep on drawing, and a whole lot of other people could be, the way I have it all figured out in the book. Could be like 70 millionaires a month. 70 millionaires a month to come out of that, right? And then times that a year, I don't know, you talk about 840 millionaires you have in the country.
Yeah, that's certainly a much more viable plan than what we have now. Actually, I wrote an article about a year or so ago about when the Powerball got up so high. I think it was up around 600 or 700 million. Right. Really, what people are doing is they're going out and paying stupid tax because only one person is going to win. But when you have multiple winners like you're talking about, that makes it a lot more interesting, I
Yes,
think.
right. I'd rather have a nice piece of the pie than no piece, right?
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
so then, that, a lot of that. Well, then, I'm going to go further with one more idea.
Okay.
From Mania 2, in regards to, well, there's a lot of debate about, what our congressmen are doing as far as making more laws and everything. And so then, well, I thought that, maybe like 98% of Americans have their own computers. So then really, I don't think we really need per se, like Congress to pass our laws for us. Each and every one of us citizens, that we could be responsible enough, hopefully responsible enough, that we could actually vote for the laws. And then maybe the congressman can monitor what we want instead of them being influenced by lobbyists and to vote against things that maybe don't even really make that much sense or, create problems for a whole lot of people. So then, a lot of times I think they pass laws that it's not truly represented by the majority of the people, that they're being influenced and they're tending to go that way themselves. I understand we vote for these people with great confidence and they're going to represent us and everything. But a lot of times, we find out that they're criminals themselves, maybe. So then, maybe this would be an idea to put forward that each and every citizen could have their own private secured account and then be put forward different laws to be made. And according to the true majority of the people, that law would be passed or not. But like I say, there's a whole lot of different things we could do in this country to make it a greater country. It's only my hopes that, that the book would circulate enough and, the right people would get it to promote the book, help me promote the book, just to get the word out. I think it's a very interesting book. And then maybe it would come to the attention of President Trump, through the line of different authorities and everything. And, maybe we want to look at a couple of these different ideas.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so, because what Congress is doing is not, they're not doing anything other than making themselves rich. So, and it takes them forever to pass anything. And when they do pass them, they usually have all kinds of amendments or riders or whatever attached to the bills that are only, suited for themselves and their lobbyists. So that is a great idea. Russ, what do you have planned for the future?
Well, I'm 71 years old now, Bill. I find myself breaking down now and then, but I'll continue on. I'm a big-time advocate for the Military Order of the Purple Heart, being a Purple Heart recipient. Mm-hmm. So then, right now, I have different articles that have been accepted by different medias. I've been in my Buffalo paper and stuff like that, in regards to saying, we need to educate like our young people to make them understand that if you're using guns on unarmed people, that's an act of cowardice and that you need to be ashamed of yourself. And then, with that, I put in that, like newspapers when, whoever, and I'm just mentioning young, but I mean whoever does, this horrible act of a mass shooting or killing, whatever have you, that they should not even have their picture in the paper. We should be able to also make their families responsible because, in all families, we're looking at each other to make sure that we're doing the right things in life. If you're any kind of a decent family that you love your children or you love your parents, you're watching them, you're looking at them. If they're acting, with strange behavior, violence, and all this kind of stuff and everything, you might want to report them to the authorities, get them some help or something like that. Mm-hmm. I like to say these rages that these young people will be going on, and naturally even older people, you can't even understand it. But I'm saying, I thought maybe we could use the matter of the Purple Heart, to show that, 1 million soldiers over the period of our history have been killed in combat, and millions have been wounded. And, they've sacrificed their lives and stuff like this, to keep our country free and, to keep our principles intact and everything. And that, people, really need to understand, I don't think you could take all the guns away from all the Americans. That's not, that's written right into our, our Constitution and everything. Mm-hmm. I think you need to make the people more responsible. So then, you know, I want to say that Purple Heart needs to be promoted more in regards to showing that, violence is supposed to be used in your defense of the country, and that, put that forward and, just educate these people, make them understand that they're cowards. By doing that, there's no great fame or anything to that. So, yeah, that's working on that program next.
Okay. Well, Russ, I really appreciate you being on the show, and for everybody that's watching, Russ has got a lot of ideas, and maybe some of us have ideas too, but you need to write them down, and that's what Russ has done. He's written them down in his books, and I encourage you to go out and buy them, order them, and read them, and start thinking about, people who are coming up with all these great ideas to help America become greater, not only great again, but much greater in the future, because that's really what it's all about. So, Russ, thank you so much for being on the show with me on the American Vision, and I wish you the best in the future.
Thank you, Bill. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm glad I'm back, and I hope you really enjoyed our guest. Russell is really an interesting guy, and he's got a lot of great ideas, and I would encourage you to go out and look for his books, and the titles and the links to them are all in the article that accompanies this video. So be sure and do that, and help promote some of these ideas, because that's what our country's all about, coming up with new ideas to make us better in the future. Which kind of reminds me of my book that I'm just completing. I hope to get it done in the next few days. Is 2020 A Clear Vision for Our Future, which is a book of ideas, just like 2020 A Clear Vision for America. And so I'd like for you to get my book too. You really need to start reading books, folks, and tell other people to read books, and pass this on to other people. Share this article and video with other people, and encourage them to start getting enlightened. There's one thing to be woke up to what's going on in the country today. Another thing is to be enlightened, and that's what we need to be. And one way we can be enlightened is to get as much knowledge as we possibly can. So I'm going to leave now, boys and girls. I'll see you next time. Remember some of the things that are going on, like Revelation, Dawn of Global Government is a video I did. I encourage you to look for that one. I did one on sex for vets, and on some other veterans organizations, Cadence Call Ministries, for example, and War Speak. So these are all worthy causes that are helping our vets overcome PTSD, and to help us stop this incident, or whatever you want to call it. We're losing so many vets per day to suicide. So God bless all of our vets. God bless all of our active duty personnel. God bless everybody had received a Purple Heart, because you really gave a lot. And God bless America. God bless you all, boys and girls. And God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.